2, 1, go.
All right. So here we are on Test Bug, one of the iCup maps, and iCCup maps, excuse me. And we've got Bomber, the green Terran here, spawning at the 3 o'clock position. And his opponent and teammate is Curious, spawning here as the red Zerg at the 7 o'clock position. Now, is this a 3-player map or is this 4-player?
This is a 3-player map. The other spawn is in the top left, even though it is split into 4 different terrain types.
Right, that's why I was asking. It kind of threw me off a little bit.
Apparently, that's actually the maximum number you can do, as the map maker was trying to push it to 5, but the map editor just wouldn't let him throw in a 5th tile set into the same map, which I find rather amusing. The top right actually used to be a desert tile set, but it just looked too ugly, so they switched it over to this Shakuris, I don't remember what it's called. And just waiting to see how this plays out, because this map is actually way bigger than it looks. If you take a look at the rush distance, there's kind of these smoke areas right here at the natural that actually shows you how far this watchtower can see into your natural. So you get an idea of if you build right outside this smoke, if your opponent does manage to take that watchtower, they can't see into your base. But just if you follow this path, it takes quite a bit of walking to go from base to base here on Test Bug.
Yeah, I'm very curious actually to see what we're gonna see from Bomber in this game. As last game we just saw aggression, and we'll have to see. We don't see a second. Why am I saying see so much? I don't see a second Rax right now. We do see also gas coming, so we're not gonna see a 2 Rax opener. Yeah. Take it away, man. I gotta stop saying C.
it's just very typical for a much bigger map like this. This is a really good adjustment by Bomber. Enigma can be a big map, but they didn't spawn in the cross positions, so it was a really good opportunity, especially with that trick of lifting the barracks down, which was really cool in the early game, of applying a lot of pressure with Marines. It did a good amount of damage, so he just kept doing it. But here on Test Bug, he will have to play for a bit more of a macro game. As you know, he's actually quite good at that, seeing as he almost took out MVP. And he's got something like a 90% win rate in TVT, completely ridiculous, but he is actually trying to set up a bunker, trying to force Curious to overreact and pull drones, as there's only one Marine on the way and it's quite a ways away from actually getting there. But Curious did do a good job of only pulling 2 workers to shut that down, but his drones left, so he might be able to set up another one.
Yeah, this is going to be very interesting. Bomber continuing with this aggression we saw last game. Now 4 drones being pulled, and that Marine and SCV should have to fall back as they're being transferred over there to the natural. There is one more Marine joining this little excursion force, but the hatchery has finished, and we have 6 lings being produced. So if anything, he got an extra production of a larva, but it wasn't really too much damage being done this early on.
Yeah, and Bomber's actually completely cut production, moving into a factory. Has a tech lab on that barracks. He might actually switch that and go for some blue flame when that finishes, as we've been seeing a lot of blue flame in basically every matchup in general, but he is actually going to open up with a couple of Marauders. I don't know if he's going to go full mech production here, but it's one of those things where if you try to go for a really mech heavy build, it's going to be weak here in the early game, so supplementing it with some bio is just a really good way of covering that early game weakness. It won't be quite as bad on a big map like this, as it'll be hard for Curious to take advantage, but you can see that there are 6 Zerglings pushing in here. He does not actually retreat soon enough, so you'll lose all of them, and once again, early in the game, losing your Zerglings means you have to rebuild them. That's more larvae that aren't drones. Doesn't look like a whole big deal, but that is a pretty decent setback to Curious this early.
Yeah, that's a pretty big thing. As you see Bomber pushing across the map right now, he feels very confident after taking out those lings. Looks like about 6 more are going to pop out of the larva, and the spine crawler going down. Pretty standard stuff, but he needs to be careful. He needs to pull those lings back into the base, as the Hellion will, of course, tear through them. That one Marauder will help so much with that spine crawler, and that second Hellion, this might be a very fast game, Relkun.
Yeah, he's actually putting on a lot of pressure here. He needs to finish this spine crawler, but it's getting really low. Drones coming off the line, just trying to buy some time for the spine crawler to finish, because once that's up, and there's more Zerglings on the field, speed's very close to finishing. He should be able to keep Bomber out of the base with the help of that spine crawler, as long as he can keep it from dying. Zerglings are rushing forward, but speed is... Oh, there we go, just finishes right on time. So he will get a really good surround and chase Bomber the hell out of his natural. But that was a lot of Zerglings, like we said really early in the game. When you don't want to be making Zerglings. Bomber's actually moving his buildings around, but he will get them landed in time to get his wall up and be able to keep this out of his base.
Yeah, that was kind of scary. We saw Bomber's minerals go up to about 700 right there. He immediately threw down a command center. I almost think that he thought he was going to win right there and almost gave up, as his minerals were so high, typically not something you see. And now we have a bunker going down at his ramp and getting siege tech research, getting the tank out. He's got to feel a little bit worried as he knows he's that much farther behind after that initial attack. Let's pop open the unit counting station. 32 drones, 4 Curious, 28 SCVs, and 1 Mule, 4 Bomber.
Yeah, and there's an Overlord over here near Bomber's base getting ready to try and figure out when he wants to make that dive into the base. Because usually when you see an Overlord position there, it means that he's going to try and suicide it in later at a crucial point and take a look at the tech path. Because it's pretty much the only way Zerg has of scouting their opponents once you get into the mid-game. So you can see a lot more barracks on the way here for Bomber, so it's not going to be heavy mech play. We're just going to see Marines and tanks. Once he gets a couple good number of tanks on the field, he's probably going to make a really strong push. On this map with these extra watchtowers in the center, he can just hop from watchtower to watchtower with those tanks, make a really good strong push. But you can see that Curious is actually breaking the rocks on Bomber's watchtower. He wants to try and grab this to get some vision of when Bomber is going to move out. So this might work out really well for him. This is one of those things on when players choose to break this or not could make really interesting plays on this map.
We did have an Overlord sneak in from the north of Bomber's base. He did see the factory, the racks, and the command center, but he did not see the fact that there are 3 racks down in the main of Bomber's base, and he's finally taken out those rocks in the middle. And wow, you can actually see so much with that Zelnaga tower there closest to Bomber's base.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is you have to make the choice of taking down that rocks in order to hold that. And then of course if you take it down and then your opponent immediately clears out and sieges up on top of that watchtower, you're kind of in a little bit of trouble as a Zerg player. So if you're going to take that watchtower, you have to be somewhat confident you're going to be able to hold it for a decent amount of time for it to pay off. But we do see a third base over here for Curious. He has his spire almost done. There's another hatch somewhere. Yeah, there's a macro hatch in his base. So he's really looking to start his unit production and get his supply up really high. 8 Mutalisks, oh my god. So we're going to see some really heavy muta play. Curious taking the other watchtower as well. Really wants to take these watchtowers and get good map vision.
I think we're getting ready to see a nice little macro game between these two players. Baneling Nest about halfway done. Those 8 mutas will be popping here. Flyer attacks level 1 started as well. And both those hatcheries are going to pop right now. The third should be saturated here in just a couple of seconds. Another destructible rocks falling in the middle of the map, and he will, of course, take over that Zelnaga tower. And again, we see some more depots here for a wall off. His Bomber is now going to move out and possibly just secure this tower. As the mutas are streaming into his base, no missile turrets up. It's going to be very, very hard to not take any damage from these mutas as they have started working on those SCVs.
Yeah, and this is a big enough push where Bomber might decide to just keep going and force Mutalisks to have to defend. It looks like that's what he's actually going to do. Siege up outside of Curious's base, and now Curious has to go, oh crap, has to get these Mutalisks back to his natural in order to try and defend this. You can see he doesn't have that many Banelings. 10 are morphing, actually losing a lot of Zerglings before the Banelings and Mutas get into position. That's really going to hurt his ability to defend this, but the Mutalisks do manage to snipe one of those tanks really nicely. Broodling's getting into contact as well. Curious looks like he might be able to hold this, but he did lose that hatchery. It's going to be a pretty big blow to him, and Bomber's going straight after his other one. Baneling's going for those Marines, but they are split up quite nicely, not doing a whole lot of damage for a lot of Banelings.
Yeah, that was a nice defend from Curious. He used his Mutalisk, did what they should be doing, cutting off any extra units coming that way to join the Terran forces. Took out all the tanks as we saw Bomber a little bit out of position with his Marines, a little bit too far forward. He did take out that hatchery, though, at the natural, and that's going to get rebuilt here in just a couple of seconds, I believe. But that was a nice little defense there and also a nice little attack. And missile turrets are up in the main of Bomber. It looks like only one right now. And the mutas will be able to have free reign, or excuse me, a second missile turret, but they are going to have a pretty good shot at taking out a lot of these SCVs if they do want to commit to that.
Yeah, and he can go after the refinery and the supply depot, and then the bouncing will take out some SCVs. He's going to take out this engineering bay, the other refinery, anything he can that's out of position from a turret, just going to be super annoying. So really the job of the Mutalisks is just to be as annoying as possible, and he's doing a really good job with it. Instead of really droning up here and trying to recover, he's making a lot of units, which is going to be a good read because the fact that Bomber is just staying hyper aggressive on him, like in the previous game, but still does not have the Baneling speed. One tank shot taking out almost all of the Banelings. That difference of not having speed on the creep here, you can really see that right there, as the Banelings would have gotten in there and blown up all those Marines if he had finished the speed upgrade. Curious down to one base with his hatchery only half done. It is natural. Looks like he's in quite a bit of trouble, but he will clean this up with the Mutiling. But he keeps fighting off these attacks only after he loses hatcheries, so he's getting farther and farther behind here.
Yeah, it looks like he even missed a couple of larva injections there, as the queens sitting in his main are pretty high on their energy, 88 on one of them and 79 on the other one. He's going to continue to try to keep map control with these Mutalisks, poking and prodding into the Terran's base. But it's not going to be that successful, as there's just a ton of Marines. He's going to try to do his best, takes out one of the depots, should get a second one here. But that's pretty much all he's going to be able to do unless he can sneak into the back here, as the missile turrets are out. Or are killed, excuse me.
Yeah, so it's really good. You can see these Mutalisks are just delaying and keeping Curious in the game a little bit longer. He got that extra hatchery up. Bomber still isn't on 3 bases. He's starting the Baneling speed upgrade. It's still quite late, but if he can buy enough time for that to finish and get a good number of Banelings on the field, he will still have a chance here, but Curious is going to have to play really well. But of course, with these Mutalisks out and just roaming the field, it is going to be really tough for Bomber to secure a 3rd base, and he is going to be looking to do that somewhat soon, as his main is getting quite close to low, but the Mutalisk coming in, taking out a turret, forcing him to have to build more. He's doing an excellent job of buying time. Like I've said so many times, time is kind of the 3rd resource in StarCraft 2. When you're able to really buy a lot of time to try and make a comeback, it's really valuable.
Yeah, this is pretty impressive, honestly, from Curious. That's not so impressive, running all of your mutas into a ton of Marines, but he will fall back. That he's able to keep himself in the game this long. He does have his hatchery back up at his natural. His 3rd is about halfway complete, and still no aggression just yet out of Bomber. And as I say that, it looks like he is going to make a push with almost all of his forces, making sure that the Mutalisks do have to come fight instead of staying at his base.
Yeah, and this is a really good way to deal with these Mutalisks when they're being this big of a problem. You get a lot more turrets up, sometimes you get that range upgrade, and then you just sort of go and attack his base, because Mutalisks will have to come to defend when he isn't behind like this. You can see he's flying around taking out all of these turrets, but he will have to fly home in a short while, as Curious just doesn't have a whole lot of Banelings. He does have a couple with a lot of Zerglings, but the Banelings, he's doing a great job of spreading these Marines. They only kill a couple Marines. He loses all the tanks, but there's still a lot of Marines here on the field. Going to push straight into the natural to do some more damage. Just not enough Banelings there by Curious, as he's losing his entire drone line at the natural. Zerglings and Mutalisks once again flying to try to clean this up, but he's going to have a little bit tougher time of it. If he does manage to clean it up, he's again taken more damage beforehand. So Bomber's still pulling ahead, but he still needs a 3rd base. So Curious if he can try and stay in this a little bit longer. The lack of an extra base will start to catch up to Bomber.
Yeah, that was great positioning there from Bomber, wedging his Marines between the minerals and that hatchery right before it fell. And a ton of Banelings coming in, killing almost all of the Marines there from Bomber for Curious. And now we see another attack onto this 3rd. Bomber's just not letting him keep any of his hatcheries alive, as Curious is going to have to once again defend against a ton of Marines and a tank in the same exact position that we saw, and that is a ton of Banelings. Looks like he might be able just to attack A into that, but more units are streaming across the map. He does still have those Mutalisks up. We'll have to see how he can hold this, and if he can hold this.
Yeah, he's still taking more damage. He did lose some drones there. He's going to be losing some of these mutas, which he can't really afford to rebuild at the moment. So Bomber's doing a good job here. Even though Curious is still hanging on, this Mutalisk cloud is much, much thinner. It's more of a Mutalisk mist at this point. He's just trying to push in, keep doing damage, keep hitting this drone line, keep whittling down the numbers of mutas. Because once there's not that many Mutalisks left on the field, Bomber can just sort of roll him over. But the issue is still no sign of an extra base for Bomber. He might just lift up his main command center here in a little bit, as that is one of the fallback options for Terrans. His main's very close to mining out. Wouldn't be too surprised to see that lift off in a short while, but he is pushing back in on this third base, trying to take it out. Curious just doesn't have enough forces in the area, trying to buy time. This hatchery is so low on health. A couple banelings are going to roll in, but Bomber does manage to take out that hatchery. Curious is now on one base, no mining at all. There's the GG. Really good constant pressure from Bomber there in that game.
Yeah, I do want to apologize. I was a little bit ahead of your replay, so I was casting from the future. The alarm, guys. I let Railcoon do the talking because I didn't want to spoil